Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the planet as a great heart, pulsing in the vastness of space. Each beat is a cycle of life, each pause a sacred interval between what dies and what is reborn. The Earth is not merely the stage where we live. She is a living being in transformation, breathing with us, responding to what we feel, think, and create. Now imagine that this heart begins to accelerate. Oceans stir, winds change direction, the ground vibrates with greater intensity. It may look like fear, but perhaps it's only a call, a silent plea for balance. The planet, like us, seeks healing, and all true healing requires movement, rupture, and surrender. Many call this moment the end of times. But what if that expression is just an inaccurate translation of what's truly happening? What if what we are living through is not the end, but a cosmic birth, painful, intense, yet profoundly necessary? EDGAR CAYCE, known as the Sleeping Prophet, spoke of this more than a century ago. And the question that now echoes is simple but powerful. What if what CAYCE foresaw about the end of times was not destruction, but the beginning of a completely new consciousness, one that has already begun to awaken within us? EDGAR CAYCE was born in 1877 in a small rural community in Kentucky, USA. He was a humble man, soft-spoken and devout, who never sought fame or spiritual prestige. Since childhood, he had shown an unusual sensitivity, claiming to converse with luminous presences and to learn about life in ways he couldn't explain. But what would make him known around the world came years later, when he began to enter deep trance states to answer questions that transcended human logic. During these trances, CAYCE spoke calmly, as if another part of him, wiser and more universal, had taken control. This state became known as a psychic reading. There are more than 14,000 recorded sessions, carefully documented, covering themes that range from physical healing to the origins of the soul, from past lives to the future transformations of the earth. He never called himself a prophet, yet his descriptions of events yet to come drew the attention of scientists, physicians, and spiritual scholars across the world. What impressed people most was CAYCE's humility. He worked as a photographer and lived a simple life outside his trance states. He never saw himself as someone special, but as an instrument of something greater. He often said that every human being has access to the same inner source of wisdom, what he called the record of the soul, or universal consciousness. For him, the deepest answers didn't come from outside, but from a silent place within each person. When his visions began to speak of great changes on Earth, disasters, renewals, and the birth of a new era, some called him a visionary, others a madman. Yet time, quietly and steadily, began to reveal that many of his predictions aligned in an unsettling way with the events of our present. And it is at this point that his story stops being about the past and begins to speak directly to us, here and now. For EDGAR CAYCE, the Earth was not merely a rock floating in space. It was a conscious, living being, pulsing and constantly seeking balance and growth. He described the planet as a living body, the mountains as its bones, the rivers and oceans as the blood that circulates, the air as the breath of life, and the inner fire as the heart that keeps everything in motion. Just as the human body reacts to imbalance, the Earth also shows symptoms when something in its system is disturbed. According to CAYCE, the collective thoughts and emotions of humanity are not confined to individual minds. They emanate real energy that spreads like waves. When fear, greed, or indifference dominate, that energy creates tensions the planet must release, whether through climatic events, earthquakes, or geological transformations. To him, the physical changes of the Earth were direct reflections of the moral and spiritual changes within humanity. Today, modern science is beginning to approach this same idea, though in a different language. It speaks of the biosphere, the global ecosystem, planetary self-regulation. The Earth responds, not out of vengeance, but out of the need to restore equilibrium. CAYCE anticipated this vision decades before ecology was recognized as a science, showing that everything is interconnected on levels we are only beginning to understand. This perspective completely transforms how we perceive natural disasters and planetary phenomena. Instead of punishments, they become messages, signals that something is out of harmony, both within us and within the planet. Perhaps what we call the end is merely the Earth's echo, asking us to awaken to a new kind of relationship, not of domination, but of respect and cooperation. And if we listen closely, there may still be time to heal the body of the Earth, beginning with the human soul. Among CAYCE's many readings, some of the most striking describe drastic geographical changes on Earth. He spoke of pole shifts, floods, the re-emergence of land masses, and even the return of ancient submerged civilizations. To many, these visions seemed symbolic, but CAYCE viewed them as natural processes of planetary renewal, inevitable cycles within the cosmic breath of the Earth. In his words, entire regions could undergo transformation. Parts of North America's coasts might sink beneath the sea, while new lands could rise in the Pacific and Arctic. He also mentioned possible upheavals in Europe and shifts in the planet's magnetic axis. At the time, these ideas seemed absurd. But today, as science observes melting ice caps, increasing seismic activity, and magnetic field instability, CAYCE's descriptions take on a renewed resonance, albeit on a different scale and interpretation. CAYCE saw these events not as divine punishment, but as realignments. The Earth, he said, seeks to rebalance the energies humanity has disrupted through its thoughts, actions, and inner turmoil. Just as the human body must expel toxins to survive, the planet too must release its accumulated pressures, physical, emotional, and spiritual. It is a process of purification, in which apparent chaos is, in truth, a profound act of healing. For Edgar Cayce, the Earth was not merely a rock floating in space. It was a conscious, living being, pulsing and constantly seeking balance and growth. He described the planet as a living body, the mountains as its bones, the rivers and oceans as the blood that circulates, the air as the breath of life, and the inner fire as the heart that keeps everything in motion. Just as the human body reacts to imbalance, the Earth also shows symptoms when something in its system is disturbed. According to Cayce, the collective thoughts and emotions of humanity are not confined to individual minds. They emanate real energy that spreads like waves. When fear, greed, or indifference dominate, that energy creates tensions the planet must release, whether through climatic events, earthquakes, or geological transformations. To him, the physical changes of the Earth were direct reflections of the moral and spiritual changes within humanity. Today, modern science is beginning to approach this same idea, though in a different language. It speaks of the biosphere, the global ecosystem, planetary self-regulation. The Earth responds, not out of vengeance, but out of the need to restore equilibrium. Cayce anticipated this vision decades before ecology was recognized as a science, showing that everything is interconnected on levels we are only beginning to understand. This perspective completely transforms how we perceive natural disasters and planetary phenomena. Instead of punishments, they become messages, signals that something is out of harmony, both within us and within the planet. Perhaps what we call the end is merely the Earth's echo, asking us to awaken to a new kind of relationship, not of domination, but of respect and cooperation. And if we listen closely, there may still be time to heal the body of the Earth, beginning with the human soul. Among Cayce's many readings, some of the most striking describe drastic geographical changes on Earth. He spoke of pole shifts, floods, the re-emergence of land masses, and even the return of ancient submerged civilizations. To many, these visions seemed symbolic, but CAYCE viewed them as natural processes of planetary renewal, inevitable cycles within the cosmic breath of the Earth. In his words, entire regions could undergo transformation. Parts of North America's coasts might sink beneath the sea, while new lands could rise in the Pacific and Arctic. He also mentioned possible upheavals in Europe and shifts in the planet's magnetic axis. At the time, these ideas seemed absurd. But today, as science observes melting ice caps, increasing seismic activity, and magnetic field instability, CAYCE's descriptions take on a renewed resonance, albeit on a different scale and interpretation. CAYCE saw these events not as divine punishment, but as realignments. The Earth, he said, seeks to rebalance the energies humanity has disrupted through its thoughts, actions, and inner turmoil. Just as the human body must expel toxins to survive, the planet too must release its accumulated pressures, physical, emotional, and spiritual. It is a process of purification in which apparent chaos is, in truth, a profound act of healing. If we look with sensitivity, we will notice that these external transformations mirror an inner movement within humanity itself. Our political, social, and spiritual structures are also shifting, breaking, collapsing. Old systems crumble so that something more conscious can emerge. Perhaps what CAYCE saw were not merely earthquakes and tsunamis, but the trembling of the collective consciousness, the necessary upheaval before a new awakening. For Edgar CAYCE, the phenomena of nature were not punishments sent by some external power, but the responses of a living organism trying to restore its balance. He said that the Earth reacts like the human body in the face of fever. When there is an excess of disharmonic energy, the heat rises, movement intensifies, and the system reorganizes itself to survive. Thus, every storm, every eruption or earthquake was, in truth, a gesture of nature seeking to return to lost harmony. In his readings, CAYCE affirmed that humanity had disconnected from its sacred role within creation. Man, having forgotten his unity with the whole, began to act as an invader instead of a guardian. This emotional and spiritual disconnection generates a kind of energetic resonance that transcends physical boundaries, affecting ecosystems, climates, and even the vibrational pulse of the Earth. He said, when man disrupts his inner balance, the world responds to remind him to return to the source. Contemporary science is beginning to recognize this interconnection through new lenses. Studies show that human emotions have a measurable impact on the environment, that collective consciousness influences social patterns, and that the planet, on a systemic level, responds to our attitudes with remarkable precision. What CAYCE called purification, we might now call planetary self-regulation. Within this movement lies a profound invitation to humility. Instead of fearing the forces of nature, perhaps we should listen to them. Each extreme event carries a message. There is something that needs to be rebalanced. And this message is not merely ecological, it is also spiritual. When the wind rises and the earth trembles, it is as if the planet in its ancient wisdom calls us back to the awareness of the sacred. It is not the end, it is a reminder, a silent plea for humankind to feel the heartbeat of the earth once more. Among all the messages left by Edgar CAYCE, perhaps none is as hopeful as the one that speaks of humanity's spiritual awakening. He said that amid the chaos and transformations of the earth, a new collective consciousness would arise as people begin to remember who they truly are, spiritual beings living a physical experience. This awakening, according to CAYCE, would not happen overnight, but would emerge through crises that force humanity to look inward. For him, suffering would only mark the beginning of a global healing process. As old systems, political, economic, and religious, begin to crumble, a new way of understanding the sacred would be born. People would begin to feel a direct connection with the divine, without intermediaries, realizing that true faith is an inner experience. This movement would mark the beginning of what he called the New Age, a time of balance between science and spirituality. CAYCE saw this transformation as inevitable. He said that the time would come when souls would awaken to the truth of their own divine nature, and that this would be the greatest sign of the planetary transition. Today, we can see echoes of this prophecy in modern spiritual movements, in the search for purpose, in the growing interest in practices like meditation and energy healing. It is as if, little by little, humanity is beginning to awaken from the sleep of unconsciousness. He also warned that this process would not be easy. Many would resist change, trying to preserve old structures built on fear and control. But in the end, light would prevail, because the human soul, once awakened, is capable of transforming even darkness into wisdom. CAYCE believed that the destiny of the earth depended on the awakening of each individual. And perhaps that is exactly what we are witnessing now, the birth of a new global consciousness. Edgar CAYCE predicted that the planet would go through a period of great physical transformation: earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, floods, and severe climate changes. According to him, these catastrophes would not be punishments, but a natural process of purification and rebalancing of the earth. CAYCE stated that the planet, much like the human body, also possesses a form of intelligence and reacts to the imbalances caused by humanity. When greed, environmental destruction, and disrespect for life reach a certain threshold, the earth itself seeks to restore the lost harmony. For CAYCE, the climate would mirror the spiritual state of humanity. He said that when the hearts of men grow cold, the climate will grow cold as well, and when compassion is reborn, the planet will flourish again. This symbolic connection between the inner human state and the outer environment reveals how deeply he saw the world as an interconnected organism. Thus, storms, droughts, and shifts in magnetic poles would reflect a deeper transformation, an energetic cleansing necessary for the new cycle of the Earth to emerge. He also mentioned that entire regions would shift and that submerged lands would re-emerge, particularly near areas where ancient spiritually advanced civilizations, such as Atlantis, once existed. For many of CAYCE's scholars, these events would herald a new geographical and vibrational configuration of the planet, paving the way for an era of greater balance and harmony between humanity and nature. Today, as we witness the intensification of climate change and extreme events around the world, it's impossible not to remember CAYCE's words. Perhaps we are not facing a mere environmental collapse, but a spiritual process in motion, a planetary purification reflecting the urgent call for each of us to awaken and realign with the sacred rhythm of life. If these revelations from Edgar CAYCE stir something within you, it is a sign that a part of you is seeking to understand more than what can be seen. The transition CAYCE described is not only global, it is also intimate, unfolding within each of us. By recognizing this, we create space for reflection, exchange, and collective growth. So, if this content awakens curiosity, emotion, or even unease within you, I invite you to join me on this journey. Each new video is an opportunity to look at the unseen with greater awareness and less fear. And when you leave your like, share your thoughts in the comments, or subscribe to the channel, you are in a way telling the universe, I want to keep learning. I want to understand what is happening to me and to the world. These simple gestures, liking, commenting, sharing, are more than just support. They are vibrations of resonance that help this message reach others who are also searching for meaning and clarity in this time of transition. Together, we form a network of awakened consciousness, uniting voices that believe the future is not a threat, but an invitation. CAYCE said that before humanity's great awakening, many souls would return to Earth with a silent mission, to anchor the light of consciousness amid the chaos. He called them old souls, not because of age, but because of the wisdom accumulated through many lifetimes. These souls would be those who, even without fully understanding why, feel a deep inner calling, an almost visceral need to seek something greater, something that transcends routine and the material world. Today, we can see this movement unfolding. People from all over the world, from different cultures and beliefs, are feeling a pull to reconnect with something they cannot rationally explain. It is the awakening of the soul, the recognition that there is a greater truth behind events, a kind of evolutionary plan unfolding with precision. Science is beginning to recognize the effects of consciousness on reality, confirming what CAYCE said more than a century ago. That thought is living energy, and that the collective vibration of humanity shapes the destiny of the planet. But awakening is not an easy path. It requires courage to question what has always been believed, to quiet the external noise, and to listen to the inner voice. Many who go through this process feel loneliness, confusion, or even fear, and that is where CAYCE's message becomes a source of comfort. He affirmed that the darkness we see in the world is the prelude to a new light, the reflection of humanity cleansing the shadows it has hidden for so long. This is the transition he foretold. Not the literal end of the world, but the end of a form of consciousness, a collective metamorphosis in which suffering teaches empathy and loss teaches love. The old world is dying, and the new one is being born within each soul that awakens. Many interpreted Edgar Cayce's prophecies as purely mystical, but when we look deeper, we find something astonishing. His visions align with recent discoveries in quantum physics and the neuroscience of consciousness. He said that spirit is the life force that moves matter, a statement that today echoes in laboratories and theories about quantum entanglement and the influence of mind over physical reality. Modern physics reveals that all matter is, in fact, condensed vibration. Everything that exists, from the densest rock to the subtlest thought, is energy vibrating at different frequencies. CAYCE in his readings described exactly that the human body, emotions, and even the planet itself vibrate in resonance, and that any imbalance in this harmony can manifest as illness, destruction, or collective suffering. It is not a matter of belief, but of energetic coherence, something that science is beginning to confirm through studies of resonance, heart coherence, and neuroplasticity. He also spoke about the importance of thought and intention. When we maintain patterns of fear, guilt, or anger, we literally alter the electromagnetic field surrounding us. And when we cultivate compassion, presence, and conscious gratitude, not as beautiful words, but as real inner states, the brain and heart come into sync, and this alignment creates measurable changes in the body and in the environment around us. Thus, CAYCE's prophecies are not merely warnings about physical disasters, but invitations to understand the creative power of human consciousness. He already perceived what science is only now beginning to express in formulas and graphs. The universe responds to the vibration we emit, and each of us plays an active role in the balance of the planet. When Edgar Cayce spoke about the end times, he was not referring to a punitive apocalypse, but to an inner and collective turning point. He said that the true judgment would not come from an angry God, but from human consciousness itself. Each person, when looking within, would be called to decide, to remain in fear and separation, or to open themselves to a new state of perception where love becomes the organizing force of life. In many of his readings, Cayce described this period as a time of spiritual harvest. Everything that had been sown, thoughts, intentions, choices, would begin to bear fruit. This harvest is not punishment, but a natural consequence, like a river returning to the sea. What was once hidden comes to light, and humanity, like a mirror, begins to see the reflection of its own creations. He also said that external transformations, earthquakes, floods, climate shifts, and political changes would mirror the inner storms of humanity. The planet, as a living organism, responds to the vibrations we emit collectively. Therefore, the end times would actually mark the end of an age of unconsciousness, an era defined by exploitation and disconnection from the divine within us. In this vision, judgment is not something to fear, but a call to clarity. The transition CAYCE spoke of is a process in which the human soul awakens to its creative responsibility. The future is not predestined. It is constantly being reshaped by every thought, every act of love or indifference. The world to come will depend more than ever on what we cultivate within ourselves. Edgar CAYCE believed that after a period of great trials, a new era of harmony between humanity and the planet would emerge. He called it the New Earth, a time when humankind would finally understand the unity between the visible and the invisible, between body and spirit. It would not be a sudden paradise, but the result of a slow reconstruction of consciousness, a moral, emotional, and spiritual rebirth. According to CAYCE, this new civilization would arise from the heart, not from technology or power. The world would begin to value silence, cooperation, and inner purpose. People would realize that true progress is not measured by how much one accumulates, but by how much one awakens. The earth would then become a purer mirror of who we are within, and every act of kindness, every elevated thought, would be like a luminous seed helping the planet to bloom again. This new dawn would not come from an external savior, but from the silent awakening of millions of souls choosing to live with greater presence, empathy, and wisdom. It is what CAYCE called the second coming of Christ, not as a physical event, but as a collective state of loving consciousness emerging within the human heart. When we look at the world today, its crises, its contrasts, its abysses, it's easy to think we are lost. But in truth, we are witnessing the birth of a new humanity. And like every birth, it comes with pain but also with promise. The promise that after the darkest night, light always returns. When we revisit the prophecies of Edgar CAYCE, it's impossible not to feel a mix of awe and hope. Many of his words seem to speak directly to our times, to the environmental crises, the social transformations, the collapse of old structures. But perhaps CAYCE's greatest prophecy isn't about what will happen to the earth, but about what is awakening within each of us. What if the end times are not the end of the world, but the end of our way of seeing life? What if every pain, every loss, every uncertainty is actually a portal to a higher consciousness? One in which we finally remember who we are and why we came here. Perhaps the true apocalypse is simply the unveiling of truth, the moment when illusion dissolves and the human being awakens to the greatness that has always lived within. This is the reflection CAYCE leaves us. The future is not a sentence, but a daily construction. With every choice, every thought, every act of compassion, we are writing the destiny of the earth and of our own souls. What are you helping to create right now? Fear or awareness? Maybe the end we so deeply fear is just the beginning of something our minds cannot yet understand, but our hearts already recognize in silence. If the words of Edgar CAYCE have stirred something within you, perhaps it's because a part of your soul recognizes the truth he foretold, not the truth of fear, but of transformation. This channel was born for that very reason, to be a refuge of clarity in times of confusion, a space where spirituality meets reason and where the mystery of life can be looked at calmly, without dogma or haste. When you leave your like, share your feelings in the comments, or subscribe, you're not just interacting with a video, you're telling the universe, I want to keep learning. I want to remember who I am. And every gesture you make helps this message reach other souls who are also awakening, often in silence, just waiting for a single word to reconnect them with what truly matters. Here, every video is a seed of consciousness. Every reflection is a small spark that, when shared, lights another heart. That's how awakening expands, not through great revolutions, but through subtle acts of presence and sharing. So if this message resonated with you, let it keep living. Leave a comment, subscribe, and share this video with someone who is also searching for something greater. Because together we can transform the fear of the end into the hope of a new beginning.